appreciate the invitation to come and share some of our work around developing toolkits at the university. So my name's Andrew, I'm the head of Learner Sport. Quite unusually, I manage the SPLD team Mat 6 within Learning Services at Edgehill. And that's been really advantageous to us as an institution. I think it's really brought to bear some of the work we've done around accessibility, particularly around digital accessibility, inclusion, digitisation. And just to give some of the context really about my team, we have a much more anticipatory approach to supporting students at the university. So traditionally as a sector for supporting students with specific learning differences, we've very much lent into the disabled students allowance, which makes some fantastic provisions of support and technology. For the past 4 or 5 years at Edgehill, we've also offered students the opportunity to access support and technologies directly through the university outside of the DSA. And our work is very much based around that kind of metacognitive learning and very student-focused specialist study skills support. So my colleagues in the team are delivering day-to-day and helping students develop them strategies and work towards their own autonomy. And one of the cornerstones of our approach at the university has been very much around looking at the accessible and assistive technologies for everybody at the university. They're just a set of productivity tools. So my first question when I joined Edgehill 9 years ago was, why is the word assistive in front of technology there? Because they are just technologies that can help in learning. So to enable some of that, we've introduced choice in our assessment offer. So students can have a diagnostic assessment, very traditional sort of 2 to 3 hour very intensive assessment that produces a 30-page report that may be given to someone who perhaps has dyslexia. It's full of what's unfamiliar terminology. You know, that is the structure under which we're working under. That's the evidence that's required for DSA. So we do a lot of work with our students to unpick that in practical terms and what it means. We've also introduced a screener assessment that isn't diagnostic, so we're not kind of giving people answers that you may or may not have dyslexia or dyspraxia there, but we are giving a picture of their strengths and challenges that enables us to put a provision in place quite directly. The last couple of years particularly, we've seen some real challenges around demand and volume. I would say 5 or 6 years ago we used to probably met about 30 students a year who were exploring ADHD. Last year we met 318 students who were exploring ADHD. ADHD videos on TikTok have got something in the region of 2 trillion views. So there's real emergent populations that we need to study, and we were seeing, you know, some potential impacts on the student journey. And we've always seen a real impact around confidence and self-esteem through that diagnostic assessment process. So for a lot of students, sort of acquiring that label can be quite a rocky period where they need a lot more support. And for us as a team, it's all about engagement. It doesn't matter if we can't get through the door and work with people, they're not going to feel the benefit of the support that's there. So at a sector level, this is very much being replicated. So from the UCAS data, we're looking at about a quarter of students telling us about challenges at the moment. We're definitely seeing an increased complexity. Co-occurrence is very common in the students we're working with, and that intersectionality is something that I find really interesting. But in the last 10 years, we've seen over 500% increases in students telling us about challenges related to mental health and challenges related to them having more than one condition. So alongside that, disability services have been working really hard to manage the reforms to the disabled students allowance. That was my brief 9 years ago when I joined Edgehill, and that's very much still an active consideration today. Alongside the types of impacts that them increases are having on caseload and service management. And very much in line to what we've been talking about all day today, there's amazing emerging technologies that can have massive massive difference. So navigating that in the context of supporting our students well was a really important aspect of our service. So because of that increase in engagement, we've worked really hard to kind of look around early engagement and try and provide that support in a very ongoing sort of early intervention type model. We can see that the shift in attitudes towards challenges and disability in society, and that's fantastic. That's really welcome and long overdue. We've had some formative cases in the sector this year. The Abrahart case, a very tragic case, has really brought to bear some of the aspects of the Equality Act that we really need to think about as institutions. So when we can see impact, we have constructive knowledge that somebody has a disability. When they have a piece of paper that proves they have a disability is completely irrelevant. We are duty bound under the Equality Act to make reasonable adjustments. So we were seeing all this and we felt there were some opportunities there to empower our learners, to benefit everybody in the room, and to really focus on students' health to reach a wider population. It's great when our students engage with us, but the reality is at a sector level, there's very low uptake of support for students who have specific learning differences. So there's a real opportunity there. And set that against the type of landscape in which we're working in at the moment. The Disabled Students Commission was fantastic. Best organisational body we've had in the time I've worked in the sector. And the Disabled Student Commitment affords a real opportunity for the sector to better the experiences of disabled students. And that aligns really well to some of the other agendas that are very important within HE at the moment. So we've seen, a lot of work in institutions around accessibility to the public sector, web accessibility regulations of giving a stick to go alongside the moral carrot of doing the right thing, and that's great. And I've been very involved in that work at the university and fortunate to have led some of that. And marrying that to inclusive teaching and learning practice, our EDI agendas, UDL, and widening participation, which for us is a really important thing. 71% of our students have a widening participation characteristic. We are a widening participation institution and something that we're proud of. It's in our heritage. University colours are very much based on the suffragette movement, and that is part of our equity, is part of our university's fabric. So we arrived at a point where we felt there was an opportunity to do something in terms of toolkits. We had an event that we put together in response to that kind of emerging demand called Embrace, Support, Empower. We ran that event for a week last October, which was a bit of a stretch for the team, to be fair. But nonetheless, it was a really important event for us. We wanted to do a neurodiversity awareness raising event. We wanted to welcome our students to our community, and we wanted to raise that profile and awareness and understanding amongst staff. So it was very much a staff and student event. I tasked a very good colleague of mine called Ian Gannon, and I am today speaking of the look of colleagues rather than myself, and they've been involved in some of this ideation, but it's their hard work that's done this. I'd asked Ian to create a toolkit around some of the accessible and assistive technologies we have at the university. Ian did a fantastic job with that. He put together a great resource, and that resource was very much based on some fundamental principles, some fundamental guiding principles. We wanted it to be bite-sized learning. We didn't want this to be onerous for students. We wanted to make the tech approachable. Good technology should be easy to use. It shouldn't require a learning pathway to get there. We wanted it to be accessible. We wanted to lean into simple language. We wanted it to be really clear and concise. And we set the project up to be very collaborative. So Ian had done a lot of work with our academic colleagues before we launched that resource last October. And the intention was that it's empowering. Every student in our community can benefit from you perhaps exploring mind mapping software for planning and automation or text-to-speech software for proofreading and editing. And we wanted something that was a resource for students to self-serve. When we went into doing the neurodiversity awareness event, our colleague Anna, who works very closely with Ian, wanted to kind of build on that work. And we felt there was an opportunity around metacognition. It's such an important part of what we do as a service and what we provide to students. All the study skills that we delivered is underpinned by understanding that person's own specific learning difference. No two people who have dyslexia learn the same, no two people learn the same, full stop. So really leaning into what works for you is a really important part of what we do. And Anna kind of picked that idea up and ran with it. So we really wanted to focus the development of future toolkits around thinking about our own thinking. So we set about creating a suite of toolkits. I'll hold my hands up and say this project did get a bit out of hand. The team put an awful lot of work into it over the course of the whole year. But it's great work and we hope that it benefits our students. So we knew we had an increasing population, we knew we had increasing complexity and co-occurrence. We felt there was a lack of adult-facing resources in this area. And we also felt that there wasn't anything there that was really addressing the holistic elements of the diagnosis. So, you know, understanding that that doesn't stop at the door of education or the workplace, it's part of our being, personality, and you know, that complex interaction between disability and personality, if you like. And we wanted to increase and empower our students to have more reflective learning and self-awareness. So we used a product called Articulate Rise, who was self-taught, the Royal League. Ian acted as a lead within the team and really got to grips with this software, and we've worked really closely with our learning design team, who do a lot of our online learning design, and our LTD officers. As I said, initially these resources were born as part of this neurodiversity awareness event, but we felt there was a real opportunity for them to embed further within the offer. So just to give you an idea of what one of the toolkits looks like, we are still working on these at the moment, ready for launch in the new year. But we all take the same format, so there's a bit of an explanation and content around the specific condition, usually accompanied by a video. So our feedback from students was that kind of multimodal resource was what they were looking to engage with. We're helping people to explore, I suppose, the symptoms, if you like, or the impacts in a little bit more detail. We're looking a little bit around some of the misconceptions, facts around specific conditions. And most importantly for us then, we're kind of going on to, okay, well what do I do? So what? If I think I've got something going on, how do I go about exploring that? And how can we link students into our services? So yes, it seemed that we saw a drop-off of students' engagement. We'd get lots of questions sometimes, they'd come and speak to us, and then they'd disappear. And actually I really worry about them students. The students who come and engage with our service, I'm comfortable about. Students who come and have a conversation and never come back, they're the ones that I really worry about. So I come and reach them students and give them some strategies and skills. So very much the cornerstone to each toolkit is about looking at the strategies and how they can begin to develop their own ways of working. We're going to better enable them to navigate some of their academic pathways and challenges. So, in terms of engagement, over the course of this year, bearing in mind we've only launched officially the Assistive and Accessible Technologies Toolkit, I think we've had about 3,500 downloads of these toolkits now. So it's proven to be a really popular resource among students. We've done a lot of soft evaluation work with them. So we've spoken to groups of students, we've got lots of feedback as part of the Embrace Support and Power event. You see some of the spikes in October. We've shared it with a lot of academic colleagues, we've shared it with our Staff Accessibility Network, we've shared it with our Staff Disability Network, we've shared it with colleagues within the Student Union, to really garner that feedback and help us develop a resource. So some of the things that came back were really pleasing for me. So the intent is to help people to navigate diagnostic processes and help them cope emotionally with them diagnostic processes, and that came through really clearly. Increasing awareness across that life cycle, so again it being holistic. I think probably the most pleasing bits of feedback for me was I've shared this with a family member, I've shared it with a friend, because if something's good, that's what we do. And a better understanding of the terminology involved, which again is ever changing. So what we've learned is there's certainly a demand for them self-serving resources. We feel there's a scalability to the toolkits. So we started off and we did toolkits about the technologies, dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD and neurodiversity. We've also developed a toolkit around our digitisation on demand service, so to kind of better surface that for students. So I'm really excited to get out into the world. And we did do one staff toolkit. Definitely won't do another staff toolkit because that was a different type of project. But that was about sort of surfacing some of the accessibility training and development and tools that we have at the university, so looking at things like Ally and Microsoft Accessibility Checker, our Staff Accessibility Network, our Staff Development Offer, Universal Design. So I've got an awful lot of favours to do that toolkit. So we have got a really good suite of toolkits that we can take into next year. The impact and effect has been really tangible on our students. We've seen a real difference in students being much keener to embrace that diagnostic journey, having a better understanding of the impact. I think it's really helped foster some of them institutional relationships.